Welcome to this tutorial on creating new tables with Data Optimizer and also defining table relationships. You may care to reference the PDF help file as I progress through the tutorial. I've opened the program and as you can see we have a list of already created tables on the left hand side, and I'm going to click on the new button to create a new table. So at this stage no fields have been defined. We're going to change the table name to transactions, and this will assist us as we go ahead and define table relationships later in this tutorial. So the first field name we'll call is date, and it happens to be a date type field of course, and we'll use date A, month, year. Now after we've defined each field we click on save record, and you can see now that we have that first field defined out on the left hand side. Second field we'll define is the related account, so we'll call this field account, and the type of field here will be text. We'll save that record. The next field name we'll call will be category. Once again a text field. I'll save that record. Now at this point I just wanted to show you a feature of creating new tables. If at this stage we realize that we've left out a field that we should have inserted prior to one of the previous fields, we can just cancel the edit at this stage and it will give us a input screen which you have the option of either cancelling the table creation completely or continuing with table creation. So we're going to answer yes to that. We're going to move up and I'm going to highlight the row with the field name account, and we're going to insert a new field. And this particular field that I've realised that we should be inserting is called transaction type. By this I mean whether it's a debit or a credit. So we'll call that a text type field and we'll save that record. So you can see now that it's inserted a field transaction type above the account field, and it will then revert back to adding extra fields. So the next field we'll add is amount. Make that numeric and we'll give it 2 decimal places. We'll save that record. We'll add one more field. We'll call that one comments. And that will be a text field. We'll save that record. So at this stage, assuming that we have all the fields that we require, we can just go ahead and create that table. So what we've done now is that the table is being created, and this is where I wanted to draw your attention to these housekeeping files down the bottom. And the first one we'll look at is table definitions, and this particular table gives you a list of the tables that have already been created and the associated fields within those tables. So if we move down to the bottom of that list, you can see that the last table we created was the transactions table. And there's the list of the fields and the types of fields out the side. So if we just back out of that for a moment, what we need to do now is start defining some relationships. And first of all, we're going to define some fields as being lookup fields within that transactions table. Now I've already created tables for accounts and categories, and because these have already been created, we're just going to go through and start to work with lookup rules for starters. And we're going to, and these by the way are existing lookup rules, so they will serve as a cross-reference for you when working out functions within your new tables. We're going to add a new entry here and relate the particular transactions table to other tables. So first of all, we're going to work with a related table name of accounts, and the related data field is the name of the account field. And then we're going to reference our current table, which is transactions, and we're going to have it look up the account name from the accounts table. So we've defined a lookup table there, which is we're going to look up the accounts table for name, and it's going to be serves as a cross-reference for our account in the transactions table. So I'll press ahead and create another relationship, This one is the relationship with categories, and we're going to reference the category's name, and our local data field, local table I should say, is transactions once again, and the local data field will be category. We'll save that record. So you can see at the moment we've created a cross-reference for these two. There is one final lookup field that we want to create, and this particular one is transaction type. So the related table name in this particular case will be transaction types, which was I created before we created the table that I'm using for the demo. The related data field is type. The local table field, of course, is transactions, and the local data field is transaction type. We'll save that record. So what we have done now is created 3 lookup fields within the lookup files. I want to push ahead and look at one of the other files, which is our posting rules. So we'll go ahead into that. Once again, we have a list of all the existing posting rules. We're going to create a new one, and we're going to create a post to the accounts and the categories table. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the value to the accounts table. And the lookup table, of course, is accounts. The lookup field is balance. The lookup key is the name of the account. The local table is transactions. The local field will be amount, and the local key will be account. We'll save that record. We're going to do the same for categories. So another post rule. The post rule is add to the current value. The lookup table is categories. The lookup field is the balance field, but the key field in determining which record to use is the name. Local table is transactions. The local field, of course, will be the amount field, and the local key will be the category. We'll save that record. So this now brings up the question of, if we're going to add the value, how is it going to determine whether it's a debit or a credit? So I'm going to bring in another housekeeping table here called calculation rules, and we're going to create a new rule in there. And this is a particularly unusual calculation rule, but it handles exactly the problem that we're talking about. That is, how do we change the value if we've only just got one amount field? So what I'm going to do is select the first one will be the transactions, which is the table name. Now, in this particular unusual situation, what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to change this field called amount, but we need to make it negative for debits. So what we're going to use is drop down to calculation type 2. And I draw your attention to this one here, reverse result on alternate value. And when we click away from that into the numeric value, that will now change to related field. And we're going to select the related field as transaction type. Now, just before I save that, I just want to run through what we've done. What we have done is we have told the amount field to reverse its value based on the transaction type. Now, the alternate value will always be the second value in the particular drop-down list for transaction type. I'll go ahead and save that. What I'm going to do is show you that we only have 2 types within the transaction types table. There's either a credit or a debit. Now, because debit is the second mentioned alternative value, or the alternative value in that field, on seeing debit as a transaction type, it will reverse the value of the amount field. So I think this hopefully gives you an idea of what happens when we use this reverse the field value on the second type. So going back into our tables now, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a transaction, and we're going to see what happens as a result of what we've just done. Well, firstly, I want to show you accounts, and we have 3 accounts, but all with 0 balances at the moment. We go back to show tables, and I'll show you the categories. We have 3 categories. We have 1, 2, 3, 6, 9 categories, but with 0 balances at the moment. We go back to show tables. Remember, we have a transaction table, but with no entries in there at the moment. So we're going to go ahead and create a transaction. So if I go in and click on New now, because we're showing the table itself, this time when we press New, it knows that it's to create a transaction. So first thing that happens is that the date on a new transaction will default to today's date, and we'll leave it as that. The transaction type, you can see we have a drop-down box here because we told it that we were cross-referencing the transaction types field. We're going to select debit. Now, debit is the second time, it's the alternative type. We're going to cross-reference an account. We'll make it the Suncorp checking account, and we'll make the category a car expense. We'll change the amount to $30, and you can see now that even though we put in a positive amount, it immediately changed it to a negative amount because of this value here. And we'll give it a little comment just to make it realistic. We'll call it gas. Now what we're going to do now is save this record. The action of saving this record will invoke the posting rules table. So we'll go ahead and save that. What we've actually done in this particular case is that it has done the calculation to reverse that value, and it's posted this, but more importantly, and this is really the strength of Data Optimizer, and there is no other database program that I know of that handles posting to other tables with this amount of ease. So we'll look at the tables, we'll look at accounts, and you can see now the Suncorp checking account has automatically had the balance updated to minus $30. Now, assuming it started at 0, obviously it's gone into debit. But that was on the basis of we referenced this account with the transaction. If we go back to show tables and we look at the categories, we can see car expenses, minus $30, remembering it was a debit type transaction. And that is the basis of the file relationships. Let's have a look at some of these existing relationships. I wanted to particularly reference calculation rules and show you some of these rules that do use these other particular fields. We'll have a look at this one here. We'll edit that just to have a look at it out here. And in this particular case, this is an item being sold through an invoice, and it's the field name being automatically calculated is tax component. And the tax component is simply the total of the particular item being concerned. In other words, we might be selling, for instance, a hammer, and we've got 5 items at $15. So the tax component is multiplied, it's the $15 multiplied by dependent field 2, which is the tax rate. We'll say 10%, so the 15 multiplied by 10 is $150, and then we divide it by the numeric value below, which is a constant figure of 100. So that is the calculation rule in action using all the fields. So you can see here that, and I'll go through and do one of these, and you can see exactly what's going on with this particular calculation. So we're just going to cancel the edit because we don't want to change that. What I'm going to do is we're going to call up the invoice items table. And because we're in table functions at the moment, we'll click on this show records button, and we're going to create a new table, a new record I should say. And this particular one, it's a new invoice. We'll call it, well, we don't know, it's a brand new invoice, so we do have the ability to cross-reference existing invoices, but we're going to make it invoice 22. So I'm going to click on add a new entry, and it's immediately going to drop over to the invoice header table, and we're going to add a new record called 22. It's today's date, and we'll save that record. So what we've actually done is we have now dropped back to the transaction table, and this is how you can create new cross-reference records on the fly by simply clicking on that add new entry. So this time we now have this record 22. I should have put 0022, but it doesn't matter. And we have the date the same. We're going to cross-reference a customer, and we'll use Smith Constructions as the customer. The product, we're going to, I mentioned hammer, so we use hammer. And we're going to make we'll say five hammers, and you can see already it's looked up the tax rate for hammer, it's looked up the sell price for hammer. And on the basis of clicking the number 5, you can see that the calculation rule has already happened. So it's automatically multiplied by 5 by 10 to give us a total of 50. The tax rate being 10%, it's worked out the tax component automatically. The total including tax has been worked out because I created the calculation rule which simply adds the tax component to the total to give you a calculated field of $55. The cost price was $5 per unit. We sold 5 units. So the cost of goods sold was 25, so it's automatically worked out the profit. So I hope this gives you quite a good idea of the power of the program and what we do with table relationships. Look, I'm not going to save that record because I did get that invoice number a bit mucked up, but I think you can understand what we're doing with calculated fields, lookups, and posting rules. The cancel the edit, and I'll just show you some of the other rules that relate probably to the transaction that we just did. If we look at the posting rules for that particular invoice, so we'll look at invoice, we'll look at these here. Invoice summary, let's look at subtotal. We'll bring this one up and we'll edit that. You can see that this is a posting rule where we add, we're going to add to the current value on the invoice summary the subtotal field, which will be based on invoice number. We're going to add the total, which is based on the invoice number of the invoice items table. So if you like, we've got the detail or the items table updating the master table. So I've got the invoice summary table being updated by the invoice items table. So that's a look at an existing rule that I've already created. Now, when you look at the demo, I have included a lot of these tables for you, and also underneath the main directories of each of the demo tables, I've included a clean directory which has all these relationships defined. So if you wanted to cross-reference what is existing but then start with a clean set of records, I do give you the ability to copy through table functions an existing table. So if we were going to change into a data folder, and we'll use, for argument's sake, the clean tables folder here, we then have through the table functions the ability to copy that data folder into a new folder. And that's how you achieve the copying of clean tables into a new table that you're going to use with your own name. So I won't go ahead and do that now, but you'll soon get a feel for that particular situation. Now we'll just go back to the show tables function. I wanted to show you one other file or one other table before we finish the tutorial, and that is the setup table. Now the setup table, and I don't have any records in there, but we will create a new record. The setup table is your own table, so if you have a company name called, say, my company, we'll call it. The setup table only requires one record, by the way. You can put your address, okay, we'll just put, and we'll put another one. We won't need to use the third one for the purposes of the exercise. Your telephone number, put a few numbers in there. Email, my We'll just use a generic name, email.com. Now this particular field here, I wanted to make reference to this because this is the field to your Outlook client or your own email client. So look, just say to make it easy, if you're using, say for instance, Gmail, I'm going to put in here HTTP, let's correct that, we'll call it Gmail my INBOX. Now, in actual fact, the directory is probably different to that, but it gives you an idea that if you provide the path to your email client, even if it's a local client such as Outlook, where you may put C PROGRAM data office and outlok.exe. There's another example of how you would put a path to your email client, but it's simply telling the program if we choose to use an email client because we have an email address in our program in a particular cell, this is how we open up our email. Now, this display address, I wanted to make reference to this because this applies to when you're creating invoices, estimates or orders. And if you're using pre-printed stationery and you don't wish to automatically print out your address on the pre-printed station, you just put N for no on this display address, because then it will assume that you've got a printed address at the top of your letterhead. The comment line here relates to a generic message on invoices and estimates. So there's a generic message. We'll save that record. So you can see now that we do have one record in the setup file for use within the program. So in summary, there are 4 tables down the bottom. These are all housekeeping tables. We've looked at the lookup tables, looked at the posting tables for posting to other tables. Calculation rules apply to fields within the current table that you're addressing, and of course your setup is your own company details. Now, I wanted to reference this table functions button. So normally if we were to click on a particular table, it would normally take us into the table display, but because we're now into the table functions, we do have these buttons available which appear, plus new, delete, copy and rename being now active relate to table functions. For instance, we've got journal entries being highlighted. If we needed to make a copy of that particular table, we can use the copy function. If we didn't want to delete that particular table, we'd use the delete function. Rename, if we give it another name. Now if we rename it, all these related entries within these files will be automatically updated by using the rename function. And similarly with any of your files, if you perform table functions, all files are automatically updated. Even if we were to come back later and insert a new field, having already created a table and having data in there, if we were to insert, for instance, a new record into the table definitions table, it will automatically insert that additional field into the actual table itself that you're performing the update of the file definition. So everything happens automatically, and this is the big feature of Data Optimizer, is that you don't have any little fiddly things to do. Whenever you make changes, the associated table is automatically updated. So I would encourage you to use the, just go back to the show records, show tables. I'd encourage you to use the example files and to get a good feel for the table functions, remembering that you can use the example files to your heart's content, look at the existing transaction, see how things work, create some tables of your own, see how it works with your new tables. When you are happy with the functioning of the example tables, I do have that facility, as I mentioned, to create a new clean set of tables using the existing relationships that I have already created. Well, thank you for the time. I hope this wasn't too long-winded for you, but maybe the PDF help file now will mean something a little bit more to you, and I look forward to you demoing the program, but more importantly, I'd like to see you purchase it, because I really sincerely believe that there is nothing else on the market like this, with this ease of use. And hopefully, if you have any problems, please email me through the support area and I will answer any of your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.